I'm not ready.
He's not ready.
Are you gonna do that every time?
Did he do
I
it
do it
last
every time.
time? No, for everyone here. Hello, hi. Welcome to hanging out with us. If you are watching this one or listening to this one, then hopefully that means you listened to the one prior to this for the Thursday releases. And when Sarah, who does our like social media for everything, when she saw our video, she texted me and was very excited about Steven's booby dance. She said it made her day. So I just wanted to let you know I got a text message about your booby dance last night.
I just want you to know that yesterday my titties was feeling so thick and I was jiving with it.
I saw it on
Um,
your Instagram just now. I was like,
I
you're
know, me
like,
too.
you're like, since when are men supposed to say like it's 2024? If I want to be excited about my big old titties, I'm gonna be excited about my big old titties. Okay.
I'm excited for you. I think that that should be an exciting moment when you feel like you have juicy titties.
Mm, it's true. It's true. I like how that's how we started off.
that's 2 weeks in a row now, where when we've recorded, we've started with titties.
Yeah.
You gotta reel them in first
I
before
was
you get
gonna
into
say
the
you got to
boring
bring in
shit.
the audience.
Yep. Yep.
Get
It's
them
like
really clickbaited into talking about Steven's boobs.
I like it. I did. My apologies to this person because I feel like this was probably directed at me. Maybe it was all of us. But somebody commented and they requested that I stop saying fuck. And there's been many people in my life that have
oh,
wanted me to do that.
As opposed to me, they're cool with me saying fuck.
I don't know. Well, I see, I took it to heart because I get in trouble for it so much. So maybe it was you. So, person
I think
listening,
you've definitely been saying fuck the most lately.
me,
Yes.
I
I
mean,
said it a lot last episode.
literal sailor, right? So I built that. I earned it. I get to cuss like a sailor for the rest of my life because I spent my time with.
You served our country. You protected and served. That is one of the benefits.
There you go. I get to cuss. So I'm
Mm.
sorry if it bothers people because I know it does bother people, but what I like to lean on is the idea that like smarter people or people who like curse more often tend to be smarter or something. That's what I tell myself. So there we are. But I'm gonna try and not do it anymore. Somebody like 2 years ago commented and said I say the word like too much. And that one, like you'll shut my brain down if I'm not allowed to say the word like I can't.
Yeah, it's the word so for me. That's how I like to like begin a lot of my sentence. And so. But at the same point, I mean, like I love that people listen. I always think it's funny that like, and to be fair, like I want to educate, I want to put out good content for people. Like, yo, we take time out of our days to hopefully try and give you guys good content and good things. So please try and bear with us if we're not quite perfect for you.
Yeah. The good
Yeah.
news is the three of us are so comfortable with each other that we can have conversations that are just very conversational as we try to do that and like put information out there. And I think I'd rather have it be this way than be like stuffy, and
Yeah,
Mm.
not as fun.
absolutely. I'd so much rather the audience like understand who we are. And you know what? If you don't like us, okay, don't listen. That's too bad. But I think that for the most part, people appreciate the fact that we can just like be ourselves.
Right.
Say whatever well, not whatever we want, but say voice our opinions. Steven's
Right.
like,
Yeah.
but
Look, you
just
can
get
say
to
whatever you want, but you have to understand there are consequences and repercussions of that.
And you gotta own it. You gotta own it.
but
Right.
you get to know us. Like I think that that's the exciting part is that people get to know us, and so when they meet us at like events or expos or something like that, I love hearing feedback that they listen or whatever. It's just
Yeah.
it's nice. So I don't
Yep.
know. I like
It
it.
makes my heart so full when people reach out and say like something was helpful or something like that. So that's nice.
I
My apologies for
I
the F-bombs.
I do like it when people come up and like, oh, you're the same person like in person that you are, online. And I
Yes.
think that's what's like cool to me because oh man, I don't want to come off as ingen or disingenuine.
Yeah.
And I'm not like a cool dude by any means. So the idea, like for me, and for why I like being a part of the industry and what I want to do, like I remember when I was first getting into it or younger, I was like, man, if you want to be like a bodybuilder, you gotta do all the stuff, and you gotta be like a testosterone guy, and you gotta be a jock. And I fucking play video games, right? Like I was a World of Warcraft kid. I was like smoking cigarettes like when I was 14 and playing World of War. Yeah, I smoked for like, I don't know, like from 14 to like 21.
What?
Yeah, yeah,
How you
yeah.
have asthma?
I used to smoke a pack a day. No, I didn't get asthma until like I don't know, a couple months after my second COVID vaccine thing, which I don't even know if like it's the asthma. It might be like the acid reflux. I'm really not getting sidebar, anyways. But like my point was is that I wanted people that were like, oh, hey, this might look kind of cool, or hey, this is kind of interesting. I like working out. Could I do this extra thing to still feel like they had a place and they belonged in this place in life, like in the gym and on the stage and doing the fitness things at the Arnold and all that stuff. Like that was my goal because we all know I'm not that fucking cool. Uh, so like that's what I always thought was the cool part about being really honest with who you are in terms of social media and content and the stuff that we put out is that my hope is that somebody out there like me that was dissuaded from it prior sees something that we do or that we put out and it's like, oh, yeah, I can do that thing that I've wanted to do. Like I don't have to worry about it. I can get involved. I can go after that thing that I'm passionate about. And that's like what's fucking cool to me about it.
And feel at home with it.
Yeah.
Right. And not feel like you're trying to fit in with a different crowd or something like that. But you can, I mean, and that's like the fun part, right? Of how many coaches that we have and stuff is that we all have stuff that like brings us together and like ties us as like one thing. But then everybody's like comes from really different backgrounds, like from the most part, or has different experiences and stuff. So that's fun. And I feel like all this does, you might not know it, listener, but it does tie into what we're talking about today, which is maybe you've got the itch for a first time prep. And so they're, well, I mean, I was going to say they're different than if you've done like a handful of them or things like that. But like, I feel like the fun thing is that when you do go to like a show, and especially when you see the like true novice competitors and things like that, you're going to see like such a variety of stuff going on at shows. And I think people, the only stuff you really see on social medias are going to be like the winners or like the first call outs and things like that, and usually for open classes. And so that's all you're going to see and just be like, oh, that's where I have to be. And I know that there are people out there who I've seen get like straight up grumpy about the idea of people doing like a bucket list prep where what are you doing in my thing? Like, go away. You don't get to do what I do because you don't love
Get
it.
out me swamp, donkey.
Like,
Aw.
whatever. I hate that. I have
Yeah.
I've done, I think 4 shows, and I never really thought like this was going to like, oh, I'm going to be a professional bodybuilder. Like that's all I'm trying to do. For me, like I enjoyed it and it helped me like dial things in and have a focus, like that was my thing I was working towards. I was building muscle to try and like get on stage, like whatever. So it was nice for that. But I mean, I would hear those things and I would like feel for people because I'm like, gosh, if you haven't jumped into that first prep, that probably hurts a lot to be told like, oh, well, if you're not going to take it serious from the get-go, then you can't pay us money to smell like spray tan in Turkey. Like,
I think you can still take it seriously if it's a bucket list item.
right.
Like,
Exactly.
that what?
And you can pay me money no matter what. I will never have a problem with that. Like real talk.
Yes. Stephen will take your money. But I think that like you wanting to do a show is you taking it seriously off the get-go. I personally, like Stephen knows this, I didn't start competing to be like, I'm going to be a pro. I started competing because I come from an athletic background. I was competitive. I went through a phase in my life where I was very focused on the athletes that I was coaching, and they were like top of the country, but that didn't leave anything for me and like my desire as an athlete. And through the process of training athletes, I was like, I want to do something in this realm, but I didn't want to get in the pool again and all of that. And it was a way for me to develop myself more as an athlete. Like I still don't really have I really don't have the goal of becoming pro. If it like magically happens, that's cool. That doesn't mean I also don't want to go come in last, right?
Right.
Like I
You
don't
still want
think
to
that we
show up.
enter I don't think that we compete to come in last. Like let's also be realistic about it. But you know, I think like there's just because you want to do it as a bucket list item doesn't mean that you're not taking it seriously, was basically what I'm coming back around to. But also, hey, if you have never also stepped on stage and you want to become a pro, that's cool too. I think that there's lots of reasons why people decide to compete.
I think that like it's also this idea that people put out there that if you're not doing it seriously enough to be at the high level of competition or to try and go pro or to do that stuff, that's not worth it. And I also think that's nonsense.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because so often we get caught up in like the idea of you win or you like it ain't first or last. We get into Ricky
Right.
Bobby town, and like even his dad was like, "Yeah, I was high on meth when I said that," you know. Um, but the because there's so many other really cool things that come from like getting ready for a show or putting yourself on stage, like the confidence maybe that it took to put on them little trousers and go pose your little heart off in front of everybody.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
The structure and stability that it takes to kind of locks things down enough to make the progress that you want, to the follow through on doing something hard and seeing it through to the end. Like, so there's a lot of great things that come from that don't even necessarily have anything to do with the stage. So I think whether it's your first time competitor and you really think you like it and you see everything and you're like, okay, cool, I want to go pro or go to nationals and really like see what I can do with this, or it's a bucket list thing and you're just like, hey, I just want to get my feet wet and see how I feel about it. And I want to try and do something different to challenge myself. Like that's all worthwhile. Like that's all reasonable. Those are all just fine reasons. And I would say honestly, your first prep is probably the best, at least for me. Like when I get people that have never prepped and dieted before, I'm like, mwah, chef's kiss. Like it's so much better and easier. I'm like, yeah, you haven't been destroying your body for years on end with hard diets to get on stage. This is going to be great.
Right.
Yeah, it's fun. And I mean, it is important to talk about the reality of competing, and you do hit this like level of leanness that you've never experienced. I mean, most people have never experienced before. You will start to look at food very differently because, or you can, sorry, start to look at food very differently because it gets to a point where it's just like, I just need to eat this, or I just can't eat these things in order to get towards my goal, right? Like, so there are, and there are some health implications that you want to make sure that you look after yourself after, right? So just being aware of those things beforehand, which we can talk about more, but like that's important to know. But that doesn't make it any less exciting.
Right.
And yeah, first time competitors are so fun because they're just like discovering this new world of what the fuck this is.
Think
Stuff,
there is
things.
something really like a big draw. Like if somebody's like, I think I want to do this, and then you get started, like if it's a good fit for them and they're like, okay, I like being a part of this thing. Part of the excitement's the crazy, right? Is the like this is what I'm doing. I'm very dialed in. Like you're extra. Like because if you're going to go into a prep, you need to be extra. And like a lot of people, that's what can be the turnoff, And I remember in my first prep being around my mom, and it drove her up the wall that like she'd be able to tell something was off, and I'd be like, oh, I'm just hungry. And this was when I was like in my last month or something like that. So you already look weird. Like people think you're too skinny. And then you're like, no, I need like 3 or 4 pounds to come off. And you're like working towards it. And she'd be like, just have an apple. I can't have an apple. And she's like, but it's only this or whatever. I'm like, yeah, but that's like 25 carbs and I can't do that today. and like, and that can sometimes, I think for some people, like, I know I'm like one of those people, I like do things other people won't. And so that's like a draw for me where it's like, I can turn off things in my brain and buckle down and do that. And so that can be fun, but that's something to be prepared for because there's not as much wiggle room in a prep as there would be for like a normal lifestyle fat loss phase.
But I think that's also like one of the things to be prepared for. Like if you're going to do your first show, is that there are a lot of people in our sport that do it for, well, quite simply, ego-driven reasons.
Right.
And one of the things that a lot of people get off on is like, oh yeah, look at how hard I diet. Look at how hard look at how hard I work all the time. And not that there's anything wrong with working hard. No hate, no disrespect, much love, hard work. It's a beautiful thing. But that doesn't mean it's better. Like
Right.
working harder doesn't mean working better. So don't allow yourself to get caught up in this trap also, to where like all of a sudden everything changes and things start going to shit. And you're like, yeah, nope, I must be doing it right because it feels real friggin' hard.
I hate it. I'm miserable. It must be working.
And like,
And it
not that it's
does,
easy,
no,
you know.
but it does require that, like you said, extra. So you do need to be aware of how that will affect your relationships with others, because it does. When my very first time that I prepped, I sent my dad, because my dad and I have a very close relationship, and I wanted him to kind of understand what to expect from a support person who has a loved one going through a prep. And so I actually sent him like a bunch of Paul and Steven's YouTubes. And I was like, watch these. And he did. And he honestly like took it to heart. And is like my biggest fucking fan in all of the things. So that's cool. But then it will affect your relationships with your friends and family. Like they might not understand, or you have to have these conversations with them. Actually, I have a first time competitor. She's in Germany. So this is my one that I'm always talking to Steven about, because I don't know anything about Germany.
Oh,
And and she
Auf
was
Wiedersehen.
uh,
It's Auf Wiedersehen, but yeah,
oh, okay.
that's
Thank you.
bye. I'm
Yeah.
logging off now. See ya.
I'm like, I
We
don't
got to
know.
get you a hello and goodbye in German. And then that way.
Okay. I'll tell her she needs to teach me. But she was actually really excited in her check-in this week because she got invited to a friend's house and she's in prep, and she had a conversation with her friend, and it ended up being like super positive, and her friend was like, wow, that's really exciting, and very supportive, and she brought her own food to her friend's house and ate her meal at her friend's house. And like this was like a big part of her check-in, because it is weird. It is this like strange thing that we kind of need to do sometimes in order to get to our goal. And it does affect our relationships, but you also have to be really cognizant to not let it take over your entire life.
Yeah.
And then you just drop all of the people that you care about, and because you're going to compete. And like, what if you don't like it? Right? Like if this is your first time, you don't fucking know. So like, what if you don't like it? And now you've ruined all these relationships, being like, fuck off, I'm not coming out. Like I need to stay at home and sleep or whatever. And now all these people are like, okay, kind of hurt by your choices. So when you are going into a prep, it's important to talk to your loved ones, friends, Barnaby the bear, like, about these things that may or may not happen. And like one of the conversations Bob and I have is, hey, like I tell him, I'm like, hey, can you call me out when I'm being really like mean?
An asshole.
Yeah, I'm like, tell me when I'm being an asshole. Or like just tell me straight up. And then I'm like, oh shit, okay, I'm sorry. And usually, let me be clear, that usually doesn't happen.
Right. I have
Until I'm like super lean. I mean,
that's gonna go well for me.
I am purposefully an asshole sometimes, because that's just how I roll. But like when I'm just straight up being an asshole, and you're super lean, like just, having those conversations with people and being aware that that will happen, and being cognizant to not allow it to like drag you down into some black hole.
So I think that kind of goes into the idea of having your list of priorities, right? The main things being the main things. And so if you're getting into bodybuilding and you're like, hey, I want to do a show, you should have things that are your priorities. Like for me, like Jillian, my relationship with my wife, priority over everything else. That's my number one. Like, but if I'm fucking that up, whatever's fucking that up. Thank you for, see, now I'm subconsciously saying the F word more.
Me
Like
too.
not even like trying to do it.
Every time one of you guys says it, I'm like, haha, it wasn't me.
But by the way, I'm sorry to whoever you were, but literally it just had the opposite effect, and it's not intentional. It's the ADHD within me. Um, but so and then okay, so one of the other big things that I talk about or I have talked about is I don't like talking about dieting and prepping when I'm doing it because I'm a coach first. And I've experienced that in the past. If my clients know that I'm dieting or prepping, they tend not to reach out if they need something as much. They
Yes.
tend to like try and tiptoe around it. And it's like, no, 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 no. I'm a coach first, which means I want to be coaching first. If
Right.
me
Yeah.
competing or getting ready or dieting is getting in the way of that, my well-being, my financial stability, how I bring in and the mortgage money, like that is a problem. Uh, and so knowing where your priorities lie and making sure that you keep those in check. Because yes, you're going to be grumpy if you're doing a lot of cardio and you're dieting hard and you're not going to have the most patience. You may need to take 5 minutes at the end of the road to kind of like mentally prepare yourself to be home with the kids and the family after you get off work before you walk in the door. You might need to do that stuff because remember, all those parts of life are more important.
Right.
Like this is just something we wanted to do because we thought it was cool right now. All those other things are more important. And that show's going to come and go in a day. All the rest of those people and things are still going to be parts of your life.
And they're going to remember how that went. And so if you're like, oh, I'm going to do another one next year, and they're like, ugh, why? That's a big like sign that you were probably a dick for a lot of your prep and it was not fun for anyone around you. And I mean, what's nice is like if you've kind of been in this lifestyle for a good period of time, which I think any of our coaches would want someone to do before they dive into a prep. Like we're already working on a lot of the things because it's really just, it's a change in a dial, right? Like we get
Right.
dial up intensity on different areas of life and things like that.
Yeah, you
It,
still have to have the foundation set. Like
right.
you can't be somebody that doesn't even know what a carbohydrate is and be like, cool, I'm gonna do a show. Like we need to have like some base stuff there.
I was going to talk about like prerequisites.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's dive into those because I think they're important to know because I mean, even when like I first got into it, I just happened to be at a gym that had like a whole lot of people. And then everybody would just be like, oh yeah, you should do it. And like there would be people who had no idea what they were doing. Like they didn't understand anything about food. They weren't working out that much and things like that. And like, can those people get to the end? Yes, but like
Meal
I know the
plans.
way we're going to coach for majority of that was my first prep. The way that we're going to coach people is we're looking for optimal. We don't want to just do things with you for the sake of doing them. We want to make sure that you're going to be in the best possible position after we do the things. And so let's dive into those. So Jess, what do you have as like your prerequisites if somebody says that they want to start prepping?
I don't
Oh,
want to list them. I'm like, oh, there's
on
a
the
lot.
spot.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Well, what's the like big thing that comes to mind? If someone brings it
we
up where
need
you're
to
like, oh, I
be
hope this is where.
Just one.
just one,
Just one. You're number one. You can't
eating
pick a song, guys.
enough food.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's solid. Like
Like eating enough food and understanding that you are eating enough food, meaning hopefully, not hopefully. I won't put anybody in prep if they don't know how to track macros.
Yeah.
Not that I think that meal plans are bad, because I have clients who are on a meal plan, but it's based on macros and it's based on a questionnaire that I send them on their food preferences, their timing of workouts, blah, 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 so that they can make swaps if they want,
Right.
right? So that they're understanding also what happens after the prep, because you're probably not going to be on a meal plan for the rest of your life. So my idea is always coming from, well, what's happening after the prep. So okay, my biggest thing is eating enough and understanding and being able to track that intake.
that's two things, by the way.
Yeah, I did. But so let's dive into that a little bit. Because I feel like there's
I
like
could have said be in a healthy place,
right and be super
like just
broad.
take up a bunch of
Be
stuff.
ready. I just want them
Love
to
it.
be ready.
Okay,
Totally.
eating enough. Sorry, I interrupted you. Continue,
No, no,
Christine.
no. So, I mean, we should dive into that a little bit because I talk to people a lot where they'll be like, oh, no, I eat a good amount every day. I've been maintaining my weight for the last 6 months on 1,500 calories. And it's like, so, and so then what I'll like the way I'll explain it to them on why that's not quite a good enough starting place for us and why we have to put work into it is, if you're maintaining at 1500 calories, that first cut that I'm going to make to try and get things moving, we're already in sad calorie land. Like, yeah. So we're already there. And then now what else are we going to do? I can only give you so much cardio, and I have certain numbers I absolutely will not go below. I don't care who you are. I'm not going to diet you lower than that. And so, and then people will be like, yeah, but I know my body. I don't lose weight unless I'm at 70 carbs per day or like something like that. And I'm like, but we can't run there. Like, we don't want to like start in that place.
If you know your body, why are you hiring a coach?
Well, that too. But it's like,
Side note, like most people, so to say, are you actually tracking those calories that you know you're at 1500, right? A lot of people like don't track vegetables as carbs or like those more fibrous sources. They might not count that, but those still have calories. So like, dude, for me, and then if you look at any of the research, like people underreport if they're not hard tracking all the time. And
Yeah.
then other people overreport. So the accuracy of that estimation for general population and most people, we'll say the vast majority, like it's wrong. And it's substantially wrong in most
yeah.
cases.
Right. And like you
Ooh.
said before, where there's that whole thing of like, oh, it's better to be like so hard and like grinding all the time and like things like that. I feel like there's also this like imaginary badge of honor when somebody, like, I'll talk to somebody and they're like, oh yeah, I eat 1200 calories a day. Like it's great. I'm trying to lose weight, 1200 calories. And it's because it's just been put out there so much, like, this is what you're supposed to do. This is what women should be eating or whatever. And then they tied that. And then they try to get into this world. And then we're the crazy people that are like, how many people I've told, like, no, I want you closer to 2000 calories. And they're like, what? Like, and just cannot like fathom the idea of getting anywhere close to there. But with a prep, we're not just dieting. We're not just getting lean or like what we think is lean. We're getting to like bizarre levels of body fat. And like I don't know why I thought about this today, but I remember in one of my preps, I had gotten lean to the point that I could see like I think they're like lymph nodes or something like that along my like bikini line. And I was like, what is that? Like I could see like vascularity and like a bump and literally went to the doctor. I was like, do I have a tumor?
Like
I can
on your bikini line?
yeah,
Yeah, I
like
totally know what you're talking about.
yeah. And I had never seen something like that before. And so I was like, are these supposed to be like this? And they were just like, oh, that's just most people don't get down to where they can see that. And like that's what we're looking at for a lot of people is we're getting to like a very weird place of leanness. And you can't do that with the stuff you've done before if you haven't been there.
I like to think of it like I always equate it to like gas in a tank, right? Like a prep is a road trip. And like you're not gonna go set out on a road trip when you don't know like that there's gas stations with a quarter tank or with an eighth tank. Like some of y'all will. Like my wife will. She'll fucking ride that thing till the light's on and then ride it another 15 miles. But like that's not wisdom. Okay. I love you, baby. But like that's not a smart thing to do. So you want to make sure that you have the ability to get where you're going and that you know that you're going to have the highest likelihood of success there. That you come in, you on a quarter of a tank, it's like, nah. Like, look, I know you want to do this. We got to fill that tank up first. We got to gas up, dog. Um, because there's also like there are physiological adaptations that happen when you diet, and particularly since they're so popular when you low carbohydrate diet, and that can affect your ability to um, lose weight and continue to make progress that you might want to make for stage conditions. Now, again, if it's your first show, cool. You're like, all right, well, I don't need to be like super crazy lean. If I'm not quite to the standard, like I'm okay with that. Great. Let's set that expectation up front. Let's be comfortable with it. Let's make sure that we know what to expect when show day comes.
Right.
No problem. I'm not here to make goals for you. I'm here to support you in your goals in the best way possible. Like, cool beans. Um, but let's make sure we have that conversation first of, hey, this is what that's really going to look like. And you might not love that conversation, but my goal is not to tell you what you want to hear. It's to give you the honest truth through my education experience, whatever it might be, to set you up for as much success as possible, whatever that means for you as an individual with where you're at. You come to me on 1,200 calories, so like, no, there is nothing to diet there. We can't do
Yeah.
it.
And I think people also underestimate how long it actually takes to get ready for a show. I mean, okay, you could get ready for a show in 12 weeks. You won't have a good time and you won't like probably how you look. Um, and you also won't like what happens after that. I feel like Stephen, you said sometime, maybe to me, maybe somewhere, but you said extreme measures often result in extreme outcomes. I feel like that was totally you. And that
Yeah.
that has like ingrained in me because I will say that all the time. Positive and negative.
Yeah.
Right. So for a first-time competitor, I usually, and it very much depends on the individual's like physique readiness as well as just a lot of other of the prerequisites that we haven't touched on, but it's usually like 20 weeks. Like, I don't know if you guys have a different number. I mean,
No, I
again,
think
it does vary.
at least
This
20
depends.
weeks, if not 24, most of the time is what I'm going to look for, where we're like, and it doesn't mean it's going to get crazy right at 24 weeks. Like I'm not kicking their ass or something, but like we're easing into it. I want to be easing into stuff 6 months out so that
There's
we,
some foreplay there.
yeah,
Yeah.
There's some
right.
dietary foreplay,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. I have like a pre-prep phase where that's like a month of now we start to track everything. Like we're on top of things. So the dieting in my brain already has begun, but in their brain, they're like, oh, okay, I'm just like being more detailed with stuff and ramping up training and blah, 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 like that kind of stuff, like making sure their routine is really set. But yeah, like, I mean, I think people also underestimate how long it takes. And that's why we need that fuel in the tank. That's why you don't want to be at half tank.
Yeah. And I think it's how long it can take because we've all seen people that do the 12 weekers and
Yep.
maybe they get close. Maybe some of them do hit the conditioning they want, but the problem is when you get more extreme and aggressive with that dieting, you also are going to be put at the risk of and the higher likelihood of losing more of your muscle tissue with that. Which, if you do care about placing, that's half of it, right? That's a good portion of it is what is your shape, your muscularity, how do you look on stage? And in my opinion, like putting on muscle is the harder part. It takes more time. It is in the gym daily. It goes slower. You get like the longer you've been training, the less muscle you get. So for me, I'm like, I would much rather take my time, keep as much muscle, especially as a guy. I'm like, nah, like, and I'm all right. I've been doing this a long time. I'm still small when I'm on stage, compared to a lot of other guys. Nah, dog. I'll take my time.
I pulled up my 12-week meal plan. Should not have been allowed to do this prep picture. So if you're watching on the YouTube, look at my face, Jess.
Mm. Your poor face.
I look like I've actually died. Like death. Like
you look a little puffy
it's somehow simultaneously puffy and
and
as
Skeletor.
drawn as possible. Right.
A
Right.
puffy Skeletor.
And I mean, I somehow took home a trophy from that. Got nationally qualified. I don't know how. But
Yeah, but would you have gone to nationals?
well, actually,
Like that's
I
a
don't know how
thing,
that
right?
season
Okay,
went.
we don't even
Also,
need to talk
very
about
different
what.
standard back then. Let's be real.
Well,
This is true.
this was
When was that?
2017. So this was very
Oh,
different. 8 years ago.
very
I can't
different.
believe that. I went from that show into a show a week later, and both of them went decently. Like I became national qualified, whatever. And then because I was a genius and my coach then had said it was okay, I applied for the Arnold. Those shows happened on Halloween and then a week after Halloween. And then I did the Arnold in March. And that was my first show with Paul. And I got a hold of him like halfway through and was like, I've been on a meal plan for 9 months. Like, save me. And then after that, like, had to take time because it ran me into the ground 100%.
So I think that takes me to a second thing that I think is really important, which is go to a show. Go to a show, go see it in person. Like what you see online, Instagram, like it's this weird thing. Like people Photoshop their stage pictures. So like you'll see people's stage pictures on their Instagram and then they'll look different on
Yep.
like online where they posted them in the first place.
Definitely
Really?
seen that. Oh
Oh,
yeah.
I've seen that multiple times, like too many times. They'll
Yeah. I'm
they'll
like,
they'll
it's
play
like
with the
common
lighting.
practice.
Totally.
Who has
They'll play with the
time for
lighting.
all of this photoshopping?
They play with the
Pros do
lighting a
that
lot.
shit.
I'm like
Even
skin.
pros.
Yeah.
So yeah, so go to a show. Go to a show and go see in person where there is no lying, there's no goddamn Photoshop, and go see what it actually looks like. Go be a part of a show. Like that should give you an indication of whether or not you actually like, oh cool, yeah, no, maybe, yeah. Oh, yes. Is it gonna be a little ticklish or not? Like it's gonna let you know because you might have this entire idea of what bodybuilding is ramped up in your head from Instagram and social media and TikTok. And that shit could be so far from the truth of, especially at the amateur level, what the sport actually is.
Right.
Yeah. And I think it's nice to like even just see yourself there and see if you're going to like that experience. Because it is very, very different. And you get like just putting yourself there. Cause I've had clients that want to follow the bodybuilding, style of life and stuff and lifting and eating, but like not compete. And
Right.
like, that's cool. That's great. That's fantastic. Wonderful. You don't have to step on stage. So seeing a show is important.
Yeah, it's just because otherwise you don't have maybe the most realistic expectations, right?
Yeah.
And again, as a coach, that's probably, I think, one of the biggest things that I do is help people to find what are those realistic expectations for themselves and how they're going to make progress towards the goal that they have. Um, because, like I said, I think we get into, especially for first time competitors, we get into like almost a cautionary tale for a lot of you guys. And I think it's because I mean, I say a lot, I'm most people's second coach. I am very few people's first coach. Most of the time, like when people come to me, it's after some other stuff has happened and they've learned about us because some other gnarly stuff has happened. And we're like, "Ugh." And so now you're kind of on like cleanup duty to some degree.
Yes.
And I think that like makes us a little bit more protective. But when you do things the right way, it really minimizes a lot of like those gnarly, rough, like things that happen. And it can be so much better of an experience. Not only in terms of being less apt to be an a-hole, right? Being less cranky and angry all the time, keeping more muscle, having better relationships with food throughout, like all these things, they can be managed in a like responsible way. So that even though, yes, we're doing something that is still like at the end of the threshold and it's like one of these crazy things, um, like it can still be managed to a much, much, much better degree to make sure that you're still in a good spot when everything's said and done.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah. And I think that's a big part of like questions to ask, like with a coach and stuff like that too, is like, how do they look at it? How do they look at that experience when they hear that you want to go into a first time prep? Like, what is their reaction and what are their goals that they lay out and stuff like that? And then, hopefully that helps you decide if either you want to dive into it or if you need to dive into it with somebody else, because I mean, I love that you brought up too, Stephen, like that with first timers, like not everybody is even doing it because they want to win, but because they want to put in the same level of effort and just see where they get. And sometimes, depending on where somebody lives, there might, I mean, there's certain states where we can find a show every single weekend and we're not going to have trouble with that. There are other places where you're not going to be able to find one except for maybe twice a year, and you still have to drive 3 hours from your house to do it. And so that's going to be a little bit different Right. And I remember Paul years ago saying something about like, if somebody reaches out to me and they're like, I have to do this show because, my mom's dying and like, I've always wanted to do this and she wants to see me or something. And they move the date. I remember him like telling this story like 100 years ago. And then he's like, okay, well, I'm going to like, I'll help them do it in the best way possible to get there. And then you just have to set expectations of like, well, maybe we didn't start this at like the perfect time, or maybe we're not in the perfect situation. And so for the most part, if you're in a situation where we can make it more ideal in like the timeline, I'm going to push somebody to wait for it to be ideal. And then, like we said earlier, there are certain hard stops where like if you're at 1200 calories, like, no, we're just not going to do it. Or you're going to go on stage looking the way you do now. And hopefully I've gotten 200 more calories into you or something. And so I think like it is fun if you go to a show, especially one that maybe has like the transformation category or like something like that. I don't know if you guys have seen that. And then it'll be somebody who just did, they did a prep, but maybe they're not up there where they're going to be going home with a trophy or anything like that, but they still made this huge transformation. And I always think it's fun seeing the support like for those people or like whenever there's like a cool story shared around like what somebody did, I always think that's great. I know the last show I did in Virginia, they sent out a thing where they asked people if they wanted to send in like essays about their experience and things like that. And then they chose people that they highlighted. And so there's a lot of different like nuances to that experience. But for the most part, you want to make sure that, like Jess said, you're at a place where you're ready to be managing everything. You're ready to dial stuff. We've got tools to play with throughout the entire thing. And you're ready to buckle down, because if you've never done it before, probably at some point it's going to push you past a limit that you previously were okay with hitting.
Yeah, in those prerequisites comes, are you good at time management? Do you have things organized? Can you hit your macros consistently? Also, manage stress. Yes, there are situations where there are kids, there are shift work, etc., which you work around, but like for the most part, do you have a sleep routine? Do you have good sleep hygiene? Because your quality of sleep is going to go down in a prep, but sleep is like top important in order to recover and be able to like continue to show up. So like stress management, do you have that somewhat under control? Meaning you're going to experience stress. Life is not going to stop. Life doesn't give a fuck about your prep. So are you going to be able to kind of manage and like navigate these things to some capacity, right? Just being aware of that kind of stuff and having that already set in place, like that's a prerequisite to me as a coach, as in, do you have these things relatively handled so that we can go into a prep and it's easy, quote unquote, right?
Easy.
You're not, yeah. It just because you want to do a show doesn't mean right now is the exact perfect time to do it. Like you should have these things easily set out, because shit gets harder in prep. Like it gets harder to do the foundational things that you just do. And so if you already struggle with those foundations, it's going to make it so much harder. Why not make it easier on yourself by lengthening that time frame of shows? I talk to a lot of people that are like, "Oh, I want to prep like at this time of year. I want to prep and compete in May and June." And then I work backwards. And they're like, "Oh." I'm like, "Yeah, we should have." So we needed to start prep like 4 weeks ago, and we're not ready to start a prep.
2 months before that.
Yeah.
But so, I think that's one that a lot of people do overlook as well. And the way I always word it is like, it is hard to thrive when you're surrounded by chaos, right? So like, man, if you just don't have a good control on the basics of everyday life, your routine, you don't have a good groove, if you feel like things are always hectic, it doesn't mean you can't do it, but it's gonna the chances and the likelihood of your success, I would say, are definitely down, as opposed to like when you do have things smooth, when things are like reasonably predictable. Life is never truly predictable, but reasonably predictable. When you have the habits down, it's not all this like back and forth, up and down, all over the place. It's like that constant stability, because that's really what prep is. That's really what getting ready for a show is. It's taking that consistency, that structure, and dialing up a notch, like Christina said earlier, right? So yeah, it's all the same things, but okay, now maybe we diet a little bit harder. Now maybe we have to prioritize a little bit more cardio. Now we maybe have to, make sure that, our sleep is this much more of a thing. Maybe we do need to be more cognizant and aware of like, okay, I need to have a meditation session at the beginning of the day, right? So that I'm not starting my day off all libbly bibbly. I don't know, whatever the word is are, right? You're not going into the day all effed up from the last one.
Yeah.
But if you don't have that foundation, like it's real hard. It's real
Well,
hard.
you don't want to try and do something that is itself already going to be new and a little bit difficult. Hangry. Like, I don't like driving home from the gym and having to talk to somebody on the phone. Hangry. Like, no, this is too much for me. I don't want to be a part of this. And that's when I'm like well fed. And if you just hit that point where like, you're really feeling it and it's all you can think about, like there's a good chance you're going to live a good portion of life with that kind of nagging at you. And you don't want to then be trying to lay these things out into place. You want to already be where it's just like you're kind of on cruise control when it comes to everything else in life. And then we're looking for ways to distract ourselves, like from the hunger. And that's where things like meditation, books, projects, and like different stuff that you can kind of like do with your head and maybe with your hands for the time that like we're not at work, the gym, or with family or something. And it's like, okay, well, let's go like color. Like, let's do something else. Go for a walk. Walk around like that. That works too.
What are you doing?
He doesn't know what to do with his hands.
Yeah, it's Ricky Bobby. Come on, man.
Oh.
We have a list. We need to start a list for Jess.
I mean,
Talladega
I've
Nights
seen no,
first.
I know who Ricky Bobby is. I just haven't seen I've seen Anchorman more than I have seen
You're breaking my
whatever
heart. You're
the
breaking
car
my
movie that
goddamn
you're
They're
heart.
talking
fair,
about.
Jess. They're Will Ferrell, but different. Ricky
No, I
Bobby,
know. I've
intense.
been there. Barnaby is judging me.
Is he?
Mm-hmm.
Is it that he's judgmental or disappointed? What is
He's a
it?
disapproval bear.
Or disapproved.
Yeah.
He
Yeah, he's a
disapproves.
disapproval bear.
Okay.
I feel like that's pretty close with disappointment, right?
Yeah, that's close. I have one other like
Jesus
check
Christ,
mark.
Jessica.
I know. I fucking, you know what? I just got high expectations and
She's
then
ready
my
for this one.
clients just kick ass. I don't know.
Taking
I
your marker
can't.
away after this one.
Um, you should have a good basic like basis of training, like strength training and training to a relatively high capacity with good form, effort, control, because that's what's going to keep your muscle while you're in prep. Like you have to be able to train and train hard and consistent throughout your prep to keep that muscle mass around. So I want to see that before we start training instead of we're like doing cable wild things in the gym. Like throwing weights around. We need to like have control of our bodies and train to a certain capacity. I think.
So like I agree, but then like there's also part of me where I'm like, if somebody's only been lifting for 8 months and like, I mean, like there's only so much you could do. And
Oh
if
no,
that's
no,
what
no.
you're really set on and the rest of the stuff is good, like, all right,
I
cool. They're probably
agree.
gonna want to see more muscle on you. You know what I mean? But then again, we have that conversation. And if we just try and make sure that obviously you're training safely and we just do the
Yes.
best with what we got.
Yeah,
You know?
and yeah, by me saying that doesn't mean that your training age needs to be like 7 or 8. Like you can absolutely be just a new trainee per se. But like it shouldn't be your first time in the gym and then also starting a prep, for
Yeah.
example. Or going, I actually had a client who went from Beachbody and then hired me to compete, but we didn't compete for like a year. But she went from like a Beachbody like that
Yoga.
kind of style of training.
Yeah.
And then we transitioned to bodybuilder type style of training so that she, could train to a capacity at which she was able to hit, right? You're obviously going to get better the more and more you train. But just having, again, just a base, because training gets really fucking hard when you are in prep. It's just really hard. Doing it, you don't feel strong. And one of the fun things about training is like you feel strong. Like when you're in prep, you don't really feel strong all the time at all. Um, I mean, maybe after a refeed or something like that. But yeah, and I mean, like that's what's going to keep your muscle mass around. And then that's also what can drive the next goal post show, meaning, hey, we now can shift our goals and our focus and still be within like a health and fitness realm, but now it can be, hey, like we're gonna get stronger on our squat, or we're going to like something like that, where you have a outlet that is within that bodybuilding realm if you want to continue to compete. And it's still like health. I don't know. It's still
Like
within the health.
healthy. Like
Yeah, like
you're still doing like the healthy lifestyle things. Like you're going in the gym. Yeah, you're still doing some semblance of cardio. You're still eating fruits and veggies and like paying attention to your diet to at least a certain degree.
yeah.
You know,
One of the fun things about post show is like starting to eat again and then being able to train at the capacity that you can. And you're like, wow, I feel strong. And you start to see your muscles get like post show.
After that dinner, after the show, you go and you
Oh,
like,
no. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm
Yeah.
oh
talking about
no,
like
that's
months
my favorite
post-show.
workout
Oh,
is like the one where you go back and you're like full of all the good stuff you haven't had for a while. You had your like after show dinner and your Sunday brunch or whatever, and you get back to it and you're like, oh my God. Like, and it's so great. But then, a week later, you're like 10 days into your reverse and you're like, why is it so hard? And why am I so hungry? Like,
Yeah.
I feel like
I mean,
that's
I'm a bastard. I
on.
feel like I'm over here on an island. I'm a bastard.
What do you
why?
mean?
What do you mean?
Well, like, so
I
I
mean,
remember that one year. I'm pretty sure we were coaching together, but I did a powerlifting meet like 8 weeks out from a bodybuilding show,
oh
and
yeah.
I pulled a 600-pound deadlift for the first time and PR'd on every single lift in that powerlifting meet, like 8 weeks out from a bodybuilding show. I don't remember if that was the one where I won my pro card as a natural or not. But that was some wild shit, right? It's
Yeah,
like people are like, what's wrong with you, man? I was like, I don't know. I'm like 30. It's fine. My body's not broken yet. Um,
that was broken.
and
Fast
then
forward a
like
couple years.
yeah, and then like this last prep, I'm like, man, I don't want to bring myself under 300 carbs. I was like, Paul, I need some help. And he like cut me under 300 carbs, and I was bitching about it. And I'm like, 300 carbs, 60 fats, and like that was the lowest we went. And everybody else was like, man, I'm not eating shit. And I was like, yeah, I'm so fucking hungry, man. I'm only at 220 carbs right now. This is nonsense. And I was like, so like, it's also relative though. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like, relatively, the longer you've been lifting, the more you've been doing that stuff, the more it's probably going to stay. You're probably going to be in a good spot. If you're new, you're probably going to have that more emphatic change in response in terms of, yeah, maybe your training, your ability to train intensely, maybe how aggressive you have to be, some of those things like, but those are things you also get to learn, which is kind of a cool thing too, right? Like you're learning about yourself, you're finding out more about your body, you know?
I did that same thing one year. I ran a half marathon and I did a powerlifting competition in a prep and was just like, I'm already deadlifting all the time. My numbers are going to look way better because I'm way lighter than normal. And I was like, I'm already doing all this cardio. Like my favorite half marathon is in 2 weeks. Can I just do it? And I mean, I'm always a pain in the ass when it comes to that stuff though, where I want to do like all the things. But if somebody asked me, I'd be like, no, we probably shouldn't do that. And I'm like guaranteed to have tried it out already. So, but I thought that it was nice having that kind of on the horizon though, because when I was hungry and like was having prep feels and stuff like that, I had this other thing where I was like, I gotta stay kind of strong because I'm gonna go show up there in a singlet and I don't want to look like an idiot. And so, I mean, I think it's like sometimes it can be nice, but then that goes back to the thing where like, I like to dabble in a whole lot of stuff and maybe not get like 100% serious on one thing. So you can kind of get away with it. but like I wouldn't recommend
I
powerlifting
think
and half marathons during a prep.
I think it also goes back to the idea of like we talked about, you mentioned not letting it like overtake everything and become your only identity. Like when you still have that other stuff, like the bodybuilding prep, like it can be overwhelming. It can be really demanding. Like it's a lot. So like honestly, having some semblance of that other stuff, even if it's after or planned or whatever, or to go back to later on, it like helps you to stay grounded in like this multi-layered identity. It's like an onion. You got layers, you know? So it doesn't let you get too overtaken by one thing, where then you become the proverbial like asshole.
Yeah.
You know?
I need distractions in prep for me. Like I need little landmarks that I'm like getting towards with things so I can check boxes. And that's the ADHD in me that I need constant reinforcement.
Mm-hmm. And that's all I like. Like I play bass, I'll play drum, like I'll screw around with drums. Like maybe I go shooting. Like there's a billion other things that I do, right? So like I can use those within prep, I can use them outside of prep, depending on what they are, but they just help me to stay grounded and kind of like other aspects of who I am so that I don't get lost in that one thing. And especially for like people who are new to it, you don't want to get lost in the sauce that early.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It can make you burn out and like not like it.
Well, it becomes no fun because you feel like you can't do anything fun. Like
Definitely seen lots of influencers who dove right in and now they are like not in. So it's interesting to see. And I don't know, as a coach, I try to make that very clear to my clients, like, this is great, but it's not your whole life, and really like foster that, not balance, because balance in prep is not a thing, but like foster some sort of, I don't know,
Balance.
outside body. Yeah, some
It
sort
is
of
it's
balance
balanced. Well, the thing is,
within
it's like,
prep balance.
but the balance is it's personal, right? So like what's
Yeah.
balanced for me isn't necessarily balanced for you or it's the other person, right? It's damn sure not what's balanced for Christina with, her herd of children, right? Very
It's
different.
very different.
So like understanding what you're balance, and I've definitely lost people because like they've wanted to dive in head first so much so that like we experience it. So we kind of can see some of the warnings. So I'm like, hey, you gotta back off. Hey, there's a lot of unhealthy things happening here. A lot of like unhealthy associations and relationships getting started with stuff. And like it's not good for us. And like, oh, like they're just you get sold on like the social media of it, which again
Yeah.
is why it's like so important. Just go to a show and see what it's actually like.
yeah.
Like see the reality of it and recognize that like, your family still loves you, hopefully. Unless it's like my mom came to my first show, she was like, "Can I never come to one of these again?" I was like, "Yeah, sure."
Same. Vic is the same way. He'll show up. He will always do that. And I feel bad because he comes to like early morning races and he's sat at bodybuilding shows and stuff. But for him, hands down, if you gave him an option, he's like, can I not do that again? Like, because he gets bored because he's not into it, but wants to be there to support.
Yeah. But like, yeah, I think the point is it's like keep yourself grounded in like the real world and your real world. Don't get caught up necessarily on like the Instagram, the TikTok, is Facebook even a thing anymore? I'm old. I don't really use it.
Who does use it?
Yeah, I guess not. But like don't get caught up in that stuff. Stay grounded. Stay grounded in who you are, stay grounded in your identity. The bodybuilding is just supposed to be an extension of the stuff that we like, that makes us feel good, that empowers us, that gives us a lot of like really cool tools um for life to help us be successful. It's like an extension of that stuff. We don't give up everything else and all of that for it.
Yeah.
Bird. I feel like that's a good spot for us. Good little note.
Okay, that's a nice wrap up.
Yeah.
Definitely much, much better than the beginning.
Well, now you brought up titties, so we got to begin and close with them. All right,
You
guys.
brought him up.
Well, I mean, you did by proxy. Okay, so thanks for hanging out with us again. And let's see, by the time this one comes out, we will be like, oh gosh, the challenge might have started already. And we will be staring down the face of Command the Stage with last minute ticket sales, which makes me wonder, is there a cutoff date for ticket sales for Command the Stage?
No.
Oh, okay. So I would just keep an eye on that then. It's February 20.
Cutoff date's tomorrow. Make sure you buy your tickets now.
No.
Cutoff is tomorrow, right now.
I should have
February
Holy.
22nd to 24th.
Okay, so by the time this comes out, it'll be very close. So, if you have any questions about that or anything as we get closer, definitely reach out, because I know we're getting closer with ticket sales to where there's not going to be a million left. And then when it fills up because it's like a space issue, and so something to consider there.
Yeah. And I mean, this will probably be released by the time this podcast is released, but I'm finalizing the details on the like outlined itinerary, not the detailed itinerary. Only those who will be participating will receive the detailed itinerary. But I'm gonna release the generalized itinerary soon.
Just
So
gonna tease you and be like, look at all the fun things we're doing, and you're not coming because you didn't sign up. Yeah, she's gonna tease everybody. I like it. Okay, guys. Well, let us know if you have any questions or anything, or any ideas, or have something to say. Tell us we should
Like, comment, and subscribe.
exactly. And we'll talk to you next week.